Have you ever found yourself in this downward spiral of conventional thinking, or perhaps you're getting frustrated with your team getting stuck and not cracking those fresh, new, funky ideas? Hey, my name is Werner Puchert, and I believe that most of the world's problems are just interesting design challenges in disguise. So I hope you forgive me for using the word funky, and let's dive into the rest of the video where I want to talk about why you might be getting stuck, and then of course, introduce you to an interesting design tool called the Inspiration Wildcards that might help you and or your team tap into your wild ideation side. So before I get into this whole card deck tool that you actually want to see, let me just talk a little bit about this conventional stuckness. So the first thing is when you go into ideation session with a team, there's a lot of factors that come into play. Now in this video, I assume that you have covered a lot of those factors. Just as a kind of side note, the first thing that I usually look at when I see people are getting stuck, or even when I'm getting stuck, is I look at the problem definition. Is the problem that I'm trying to solve really compelling and interesting? Is it well defined? And usually that's where I see the problems are. But if you go beyond that and you've got all your things in place and people are still stuck and uninspired, there might be a reason for it, because the reason is usually our brains. The thing is, when you ask the brain, like, what is 1 + 1? It's going to say 2, because that's the obvious answer, right? And when you go into ideation session, usually what happens is your brain wants to latch onto those obvious ideas. What I usually do is I try and write those ideas down, try to say them to my team members. They think I'm stupid. It's okay, but then crumple up that piece of paper or that idea and throw it over my shoulder, because now I've said it, it's out in the world, now I can move on. And that's one of the techniques that I use. However, I was drawn to this whole Inspiration Wildcard card deck, not just only for the cards, but awesome article that the creator of the card deck wrote on UX magazine. So Jens Malmstedt is the founder or the creator of the Inspiration Wildcard card deck. And in this article, he speaks about a similar idea of where when you go into an ideation session, where you start thinking about ideas, is that you want to get into a space where you kind of offload those conventional thoughts and ideas, the obvious stuff. And then the next round or the next kind of iteration or next exploration that you want to do is you want to go into the look around. And that's usually referred to as kind of like the adjacent possible. So, and I like that because you start connecting different ideas. So mind mapping, all kinds of other ideation techniques come into play, and you can really crack some really fresh ideas there, of course, as well. But what he is saying is, like, you need a third round. There's a third layer to this, which I found interesting and compelling, is that you have to go wild, right? Really crack the obvious conventional stuff, really go far out, find out and push the limits a little bit. And that's potentially where you might find that new, fresh idea. And by using this card deck, they wish to or want to inspire you to go into that mode or that space, if you will. So how do you go wild with the Inspiration card deck? Let's have a quick look what's in the box first. So if you crack open this really solid box, I mean, I would put my son's little baby teeth in here. This thing is solid. It will protect anything for a long time. So great to take out on the road when you go and do workshops or whatever. Brilliantly put together, quality. And then also, if you look at the size of these cards, boy, these are probably the biggest set of cards that I have. This is workshop or session ready to rock and roll, quality of paper. And then I have to be super honest though. I read the article, I was really drawn to it, but the first thing that grabbed me about this card deck is just the beautiful artwork on it. So if I kind of flip through it, I'm going to dive into one or two of the cards so you can have a look at what's on it. But just the way it's been put together, Jens actually has a nice behind where he goes through the kind of design process of these cards that he unpacks, and I just love the way he thought about these. Then just before I go through the different categories, there's a couple of cards here, the usual suspects. So if you have a card here that explains the different categories, which I will share with you in a second. There's a nice how-to card here. I'll talk through the use cases of how you use the cards in a second. Then there's some kind of cool, interesting, imprinty vibes. And then a card with a logo on it. Why the hell not? And then, of course, you go into the different categories. On the back of the cards, you have the kind of category, but then also the color coding and then an icon for each of the categories. Great. So they've divided the wildness into 5 kind of categories that might influence your thinking, your product, your idea, your concept, or the features that you're trying to come up with. So you have here super forces, so all kinds of unexpected influences on your ideas, superheroes, conventional, unconventional heroes, fiction laws, which I find quite interesting, as like all kinds of laws that might influence your thinking. Then you have those little stereotypes that I'll show you in a second that might also have an influence. And then finally, things that go bump in the night or bump into your idea, the nightmares over here. And those are the 5 categories. Now, let me give you a quick taste of what's on these cards. Okay, so out of respect for the content here, I don't want to show you all the cards. You can see these beautiful designs on here. Pretty cool, but then let's have a quick look at some of the content. So this is one of the super forces. So here you have slow motion. What if your product is used in a super slow motion? What if your user's perception is many times faster than humans? What would become visible or could be made possible if you use this super force? Now, if I go through here, there's one that I want to share. So for example, here is superheroes. Now here is supervillain, my favorite, Darth Vader, kind of drawn out here, but supervillain. Imagine a Dark Lord as the commander of your product. Now it's used on the Death Star and should help to destroy the world. But how? Right? So you can see they're pushing the limits with this. Let's have one more or 2 more. Here is outer space. This is from the fiction laws category. So imagine your product is used in outer space and astronauts use it in a place without gravity, with gloves, or a space station, or maybe on the moon. What happens? So it pushes your thinking a little bit there. And then let's have one more. This is nightmares. You can see the little logo at the back there, nightmares. There's 10 of them. Each of the categories have 10 cards. So epitaph, imagine your product is dead. Your fancy idea didn't make it. What would be its last words? What would be written on its gravestone? Really cool little exercise. And yes, let's do the last one. So here are stereotypes. So what would be a stereotype? Band. Imagine a heavy, badass band. How could the members make use of an amplified version of your product to start the next mosh pit or create the next smash hit? So really interesting things. You can see the creativity here, princess, nerd, goth. I can go on and on and on. So how do you use this? Now, they recommend that you have your problem statement well defined. I agree with that one. And then what you want to do as a facilitator, specifically related to this tool, is that you want to look through the cards, perhaps extracting cards or categories that are not relevant. You want to do that beforehand. Then what you want to do is grab cards and give each participant in the activity one of these cards, and then give them, let's say, about 5 minutes to sit, like look at the card, think about some ideas, and start writing down some responses to the challenge on the card related to the problem you're trying to solve, right? Push the ideas and thinking. Then what you want to do as a final step is get people together to start discussing. And as they recommend in the card deck, is like repeat until you succeed. Okay, cool. I know it's not that easy. I mean, a lot of rigor, a lot of work needs to happen. And I also know that there's several of these kind of card decks out there to kind of help you crack open your thinking. I've done a few reviews of them before, but I think this one pushes the limits a little bit with this wildness that they have here, and there's thinking behind it. I do enjoy, though, to be honest, the kind of quality of the cards and the way it's put together, and also the format. So that's also top marks there. You can go to inspirationwildcards.com to grab a copy of this if you so wish. It's also available on a platform called Deckible, which I'm kind of watching and also excited about. You can check that out. And then also as a quick reminder, please go check out the website for more examples of the cards, but then also the Behance page where they actually go through how they designed this. If you're kind of into this, I really geeked out when I read that. And then also the thinking, Jens's article on UX Magazine around why you should be exploring something like this and why this might be relevant for you. So with that being said, thank you for watching this video, and as always, if you have some input or some suggestions and ideas around some more tools, there's a lot of space here behind on the shelf. We'd love to hear from you, and as always, catch you in the comments.